Mahesha Pandita, Mahesha Pandita, Vrajera of Vrindavan, Udara, very liberal, Gopala, cowherd boy, Dakabaji, with the beating of a kettle drum, Nichakode, used to dance, Preme, in love, Matoyala, as if a madman. Translation: Mahesha Pandita, the seventh of the 12 Gopalas, was very liberal. In great love of Krishna, he danced to the beating of a kettle drum like a madman. Purport: Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya, the village of Mahesha Pandita, which is known as Palapada, is situated in the district of Nadia, within a forest about 1 mile south of the Chakadaha railway station. The Ganges flows nearby. It is said that formerly Mahesha Pandita lived on the eastern side of Jarat, in the village known as Mashipura or Yashipura. And when Mashipura merged into the riverbed of the Ganges, the deities there were brought to Palapada, which is situated in the midst of various villages such as Beledanga, Berigrama, Sukasagara, Chandude, and Manasapota. There are about 14 villages, and the entire neighborhood is known as Panchanagara Paragana. It is mentioned that Mahesha Pandita joined the festival performed by Sri Nityananda Prabhu at Panihati. Narottama Das Thakur also joined in the festival, and Mahesha Pandita saw him on that occasion. In the temple of Mahesha Pandita, there are deities of Gaura Nityananda, Sri Gopinath, Sri Madan Mohan, and Radha Govinda, as well as a Shalagrama Shila. Translation again: Mahesha Pandita, the seventh of the 12 Gopalas, was very liberal. In great love of Krishna, he danced to the beating of a kettle drum like a madman. Om Agana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militang Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this chapter in Chaitanya Charitamrita is describing the expansions of Lord Nityananda. This is the branch coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, figuratively described as the tree with two prime branches, Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Acharya Prabhu. And then there are innumerable sub-branches of the branches, in such a way that the whole world is covered with the fruits of love of God. So you may say, where are those fruits? If the whole world is covered with the branches and sub-branches of the tree of Mahaprabhu. Doesn't look like in the world today people have any sanity, any common sense, no mercy. So where is Mahaprabhu's flood of love of Krishna? The potential is there. Just like you have an unripe fruit, it will become ripe in time. So these acharyas are seeing the full potential of the expansion of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. It's just a separation in time from when that happens. This is the peak potential of the universe. That's why in Chaitanya Charitamrita you read, the universe is already flooded. So you say, well, we don't see people drowning in the ocean of love of Krishna. But during the time of Mahaprabhu, that was happening. And that's the peak potential of the Sankirtan movement. So the associates of Lord Nityananda are generally cowherd boys from Krishna Lila. There are some non-cowherd boy followers of Nityananda. Janava Mata, most famously, in Vrindavan Lila, she's an Angamanjari, a gopi. But generally, the Dwadasha Gopal, these 12 cowherd boys, that's why you read that Mahesh Pandit, the 7th of the 12 Gopalas. So just like Krishna has the Ashtasaki, the 8 gopis of special prominence, similarly, Krishna has 12 Gopalas, 12 cowherd boys of special prominence. And the most intimate of those cowherd boys, Priyanarma Sakas, they assist Krishna's pastimes with the gopis. And in fact, at Radhakund, according to the descriptions of the acharyas, which describe things that conditioned souls can't see. You go to Radhakund and look, you won't see with conditioned vision. But the perfect acharyas tell us each of the Ashtasakis has a grove around Radhakund, and also the intimate cowherd boys, intimate with Krishna, they also have their enclaves around Radhakund. So Krishna always has his associates. He's the cure for loneliness. I know in the UK, maybe they don't have it now, but a few years ago they had a minister of loneliness. It was recognized when the government was more concerned with people's health. It was recognized that loneliness is a pandemic. Remember, I was explaining last night at Studio 108 how the internet was supposed to bring everyone together. Social media was supposed to help in bonding and no one would be lonely. Social media would help democracy, right? Give everyone a chance to express themselves. And predictably, what's happened? The prime use of the internet is what? News, information? Who knows? Social media? Not actually. What's the prime use of the internet? You don't want to say it. Begins with a P. So what you think is progress always turns out to have some detrimental factor, major detrimental factor. So loneliness is affecting the first world massively. But Krishna is never alone. Krishna is always with his gopis, his gopas. He has expansions and expansions of expansions, and they always have associates. Even the Paramatma in your heart is not alone. Krishna's never alone. How can the supreme enjoyer be alone? Krishna is showing you that pleasure is in the association of others. Since he is the supreme enjoyer, he always has associates to enjoy with. Everything is Krishna's energy. Everyone is Krishna's expanded energy, one way or the other. So when we want to look for the cure for loneliness, we turn to Krishna because we are his associates, but we've forgotten. Mamai vamsho jiva loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. Krishna tells you point blank in Bhagavad Gita, we are all his eternal fragmented parts. But we've forgotten this, and we're struggling with our senses and mind in the Prakriti Sthani, in the oppressive material atmosphere. So the associates of Lord Nityananda are generally avadutas, because Lord Nityananda himself is avaduta Chandra, avaduta Shiromani, the crest jewel of avadutas, the moon of avadutas. What actually is an avaduta? To understand Lord Nityananda and his associates like Mahesh Pandit, you need to know exactly what an avaduta is. Just like you read in the 5th canto of Bhagavatam, Jad Bharat, Jai Shri Sri Radha London Ishwar, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. Throughout the Bhagavatam, you're presented with avadutas, but you may not know exactly what an avaduta is, according to the scientific Vedic terminology. Oh, sometimes when there are devotees who are not attentive to how they behave in public, you call them an avaduta. But let's try to understand exactly what avaduta means. It means someone who, when varnashram dharma is prevalent, they don't act in accord with any ashram protocols, ashram behavioral guidelines, or varna protocols, varna behavioral guidelines. They just acting completely oblivious to Vedic behavioral norms. That's a service that can be a service to Krishna, to show that varnashram dharma is not everything. As the Shastra says, if you follow the varnashram dharma system perfectly, but you don't have attraction for Krishna, you haven't developed that, then your situation's hellish, even though you followed the whole system perfectly. And if you do develop a taste for hearing and chanting, that's the perfection of the varnashram system. But the avadutas violate everything. A real avaduta is a transcendentalist beyond the modes of material nature. So generally, Nityananda and his followers were like that. Another name for Nityananda is Nityananda Avaduta. Advaita Acharya, when he would invite Nityananda for lunch, would always complain, what have I brought upon my house, bringing this madman into my house? Remember when Nityananda tricked Mahaprabhu, saying, we are bathing in the Yamuna. And actually it was the Ganga, because Mahaprabhu was lost in ecstasy after taking sannyas and was trying to go to Vrindavan. He was wandering around for days in an ecstatic trance, not knowing where he was. He thought he was going to Vrindavan, but he was in the neighborhood of Navadvip and Shantipur, actually. And so in his ecstasy, he came upon Advaita Acharya Nityananda. Oh, you all are going to Vrindavan also? Yes, we're going to Vrindavan. And you right now, you're in the Yamuna River. And then they said, come with us. And Lord Chaitanya realized, wait a minute, something is not right here. And he realized, he came out of his ecstatic trance and realized we're near the house of Advaita Acharya. So he went there and they had a big lunch. Often when you would invite Nityananda to lunch, there would be a disruption. Just like when he complained at lunch to Advaita Acharya, you've invited us to lunch, but where is the lunch? I just see a speck of food on my plate. The plate was piled high. But Nityananda said, I have been fasting for 3 days and hope to break my fast today. But look what's in front of me. It's nothing. Whereas what had Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had complained, you're giving me too much. So Advaita Acharya had to convince Lord Chaitanya, just eat. Don't worry about how much is on the plate. Just eat. And Advaita Acharya told Lord Chaitanya, you say you can't eat this much, but I know how much you eat in Jagannath Puri as Jagannath. You get what, 52 or 54 offerings a day? Who knows? Huh? 56, yes. I know your pastimes. So how can you say this is just too much food when you eat 56 times a day as Lord Jagannath? But then you have Nityananda complaining that it's not enough. I've been fasting for 3 days. I hope to break my fast. So Advaita Acharya tried to curb him. Like, look, what have I done to my dharma, my religious principles? I've invited a madman for lunch. Just be quiet and eat. Advaita Acharya called Nityananda a reject Paramahansa. Finally, Nityananda took some rice from his plate and threw it at Advaita Acharya. And the rice particles stuck to Advaita Acharya, who began to dance in ecstasy. I've been touched by the prasad of Nityananda. Things like this always happen when Nityananda's around. So Nityananda told him, you have offended Mahaprasad. There's only one atonement that you can do. You have to invite many sannyasis to your home for lunch. Advaita Acharya said, I'll never invite another sannyasi for lunch. This is Nityananda. Avaduta. What ashram was he? Can't say for sure. So his followers shared a bit of that unlimited avaduta-ness of Nityananda. And Mahesh Pandit is one of them. So he would, as you heard, dance in ecstasy to the beating of a kettle drum like a madman. Dancing madly is part of our bhakti tradition, but when one is on Harinam, you have orderly kirtan dancing because the general public doesn't understand avadutaism. Even our own devotees don't understand avadutaism. Dancing in kirtan is a sensitive subject. You can't criticize someone of the stature of Mahesh Pandit dancing like a madman. You just heard about Murari Chaitanya, who would go into the jungle, find tigers, and slap them in the face. And he would have poisonous snakes on his lap. This is Nityananda's crew. So dancing in kirtan is a very sensitive subject because someone may actually be feeling ecstasy and you can't curb that. I had the service of filing Srila Prabhupada's correspondence, as some of you know, both letters to him. I got to see both sides and letters from him. This is during my BBT days in Los Angeles in the 70s. So devotees were inquiring from Prabhupada that we heard you stopped kirtans, stopped persons from dancing and telling them, I never taught you to dance like that. So we were worried because we're wondering if we have to curb our ecstatic dancing. Devotees seem to take great delight in ecstatic dancing, but now we've heard that you kind of came down on it. So Prabhupada replied back that I like dancing like the Panchatattva, both hands in the air, swaying back and forth. I like dancing like that. He said, you can also feel ecstasy doing that. But then he added, if someone is actually feeling ecstasy in their mad dancing, all right, if they're actually feeling ecstasy. So what do you think? It's a judgment call. You know what the standard is, but then in bhakti ecstasy can break out beyond the standard. So one has to be very sensitive about these issues. Prabhupada's answer was actually very sensitive. You want to feel ecstasy by dancing? You can also feel ecstasy if you dance, just like you see the Panchatattva, Gaur Nitai. But if someone is going beyond that and actually is feeling ecstasy, then okay. Nityananda's associates were just famous for just violating all protocols, all accepted patterns of behavior. And you could misunderstand Nityananda very easily, as often happened. That's why in the Shastra, in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat, you see so many warnings. Don't misunderstand Nityananda. Lord Chaitanya was an easier pill to swallow, so to speak, because most of the time Lord Chaitanya would follow the Vedic injunctions, the Vedic protocols, especially for being a sannyasi. He would follow that so rigidly that it would pain the hearts of his associates. Lord Chaitanya wanted to super rigidly display the strictures of the sannyasa ashram, and his followers were pained by that. But Nityananda just did whatever he wanted. In fact, while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was wanting to demonstrate the rigidity of sannyas, Nityananda Prabhu was thinking, he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What does he have to show detachment for? So you know what happened to the danda, Mahaprabhu's danda that he entrusted to Nityananda because Mahaprabhu was visiting temples. What did Nityananda do? He looked at the danda. What is this? Mahaprabhu doesn't need a danda. He doesn't need to show detachment. Nityananda broke the danda and threw it in the river. And then Mahaprabhu came from visiting the temple. Oh, where's my danda? Nityananda made up a story. Well, while you were dancing in ecstasy, you fell upon the danda and it broke. Mahaprabhu didn't say anything. He just, all right, that's it. I'm going. They're almost at the Puri temple. They were traveling from Navadvip, from Nadia. So Mahaprabhu said, I'm going ahead alone. So Nityananda would do things like that. And he was easy to misunderstand. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, except for the last 12 years in Puri of his manifest presence, would always follow the guidelines of Vedic behavior very closely. But the last 12 years in solitude, he would show such ecstasies, as you read in the Anchalila and Chaitanya Charitamrita. But that was in private, with his most intimate associates like Srup Damodar and Ramananda Roy. But Nityananda didn't care. Any time, any place, any kind of behavior. So people misunderstood him. Just like when his devotee, Nityananda's devotee, Mini Caitanya Ramdas, came to a gathering at the home of Krishna Das Kaviraj. You read about this in Adi Leela. Everyone bowed down, knowing that Mini Caitanya Ramdas was such an intimate associate of Nityananda, totally abnormal, inconceivable devotee. So everyone bowed down, except the priest who was doing arti. This was a mistake. The priest was a Kanishta Adhikari, someone who worships the deity in the temple but doesn't know how to treat devotees. You don't want to be like that. Jai Shri Shri Radharani Ishwar, but these devotees, what are they? And Mini Caitanya Ramdas was no average devotee, shall we say. He was always in the ecstasy of love of Krishna. Sometimes when persons would pay obeisances to them, he would climb on top of their shoulders. Or he would mildly slap them or hit them with his flute. What would you do if you had that kind of behavior in the Soho temple? You'd have a management crisis. What to do? But everyone knew this is Mini Caitanya Ramdas. He's drowning in the ocean of love of Krishna. So everyone paid their obeisances except the Pujari. The Pujari thought, well, I'm worshiping the deity. What? Who is that? So Mini Caitanya Ramdas was upset. Now you say, why is he upset? Just because someone hasn't paid obeisances to him, right? But Mini Caitanya Ramdas knew, I'm representing Nityananda. You actually have a problem with Nityananda. He could detect that. So he didn't take it as a diminishment of his own honor and stature and respect. He said, you've got a problem with Nityananda. That's why you think you have a problem with me. So the Pujari didn't say anything. Nityananda Mini Caitanya Ramdas showed his being upset for the sake of Nityananda. And then the evening came to a close, and Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's brother manifested a further problem. He had no faith in Nityananda, but he had what he thought was complete faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Mini Caitanya Ramdas detected that. Another one. Doesn't understand Nityananda, doesn't accept him. So Mini Caitanya Ramdas left in an apparent huff. But no, he's standing up for Nityananda. He knew. This is another one here who's got a problem with my worshipful Lord Nityananda. Doesn't understand his glories. So that night, after the scene was over, that night, Kaviraj Goswami tries to pull up his brother. Tell him straight. How can you have faith in Chaitanya and not have faith in Nityananda? Not possible. Better you just don't accept both of them than to try to split them and accept one and not the other. So Kaviraj Goswami, as you read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, tried his best to put some sense into his brother, into his brother's head. Evidently he failed because it is said the brother soon after that fell down from his spiritual practices because of offenses to Nityananda, even though he claimed to have full faith in Chaitanya. So that night, Kaviraj Goswami had an unfathomable dream of Nityananda as Balaram coming to him, surrounded by his Dwadasha Gopals, his cowherd boys. The cowherd boys were like bumblebees, taking up the honey from Balaram's feet. And so this is Nityananda, who is Balaram himself, Balaram Nitai. So Nityananda, with those cowherd boys, you could say Nityananda, you could say Balaram, the same personality in different roles. Nityananda told Kaviraj, go to Vrindavan. There you will find the perfection of all things. So that's why immediately the next morning, Kaviraj took off for Vrindavan. No flights, no trains, no cars, walking. Nityananda was so pleased with him for defending Nityananda. So that's how the manifestation of Chaitanya Charitamrita started, by Nityananda telling Kaviraj Goswami, go to Vrindavan, there everything will happen perfectly. And you know what happened when Kaviraj arrived in Vrindavan. He hooked up with the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. Srup Damodar had given his notes of Chaitanya's pastimes to Raghunath Das Goswami, who had memorized them. And then Raghunath Das presented the contents of those notes to Kaviraj Goswami, who memorized them. And now we have Chaitanya Charitamrita. So where does attachment to Sri Sri Gaur Nitai lead? This is especially important because this is a big Sankirtan temple, right? So we were explaining in Cardiff that there was, in the early 70s, there was a controversy in Los Angeles, which was the pioneering big book distribution temple. Things started a little bit in San Francisco, but then they really exploded in Los Angeles. So it was around 1972, and one particular enthusiastic Sankirtan devotee, just like you have your Mathura Kripa Das here. So then there was also several Mathura Kripa Dasas back then. And so they were spreading something which no one had ever heard before. That the book distributors, the Sankirtan devotees, are acting on what the, is it 7th verse of the Guru Vastak prayers? Nitkunjayuno Ratikere Siddha, is that number 7 or number 6? 6, all right. The Sankirtan devotees, the book distributors, are acting in that same vein. Assisting, just like the intimate devotees of Krishna assist Radha and Krishna to meet in the groves of Vrindavan. So they were saying, similarly, the Sankirtan devotees are doing that. They're assisting conditioned souls to meet up with Krishna. It's that same spirit. So many persons in the Los Angeles community were thinking, ooh, this is way over the top. This is fanaticism. How can you compare what book distributors on the street are doing with Nikunjayuno Ratikeri Siddhaye Yayali Bir Yukti Apexania? Woo! So the controversy went to Srila Prabhupada, as everything did back then. Someone wrote a letter, which I saw. Prabhupada, isn't this over the top? I mean, how can you say that? These book distributors coming from such Kali Yuga backgrounds on the street doing sales, that's Nikunjayuno Ratikere Siddha. And the answer from Prabhupada was shocking. He said, yes, that is true. Remember that. That's the peak potential of the Sankirtan activity. So the Acharyas reveal, like Prabodhananda Saraswati, who is the uncle of Gopal Bhatta Goswami. He's written very intimate shastras he says that by serving Lord Chaitanya in Dasya, which is the only way you can serve Lord Chaitanya, you can't serve him in any other rasa, like especially Madhurya, Vatsalya, Sakya. You relate to Lord Chaitanya as his servant, Dasya. But here's what's going on. By your service to Lord Chaitanya in Dasya, simultaneously the doorway to serving Radharani's lotus feet opens up. Because who is Lord Chaitanya? He's Radha Krishna combined. So the easiest way to get to the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna, the easiest way to get to the lotus feet of Srimati Radharani is serving Lord Chaitanya. And how do you serve Lord Chaitanya? Yade deko tade koho Krishna upadesh. Ama agya guru hoya taro edesh. Wherever you go, whomever you meet, teach the science of Krishna. In that way, the more you serve Lord Chaitanya, the more you'll be eligible to see Radha and Krishna's lotus feet. Lord Chaitanya is the portal through which you attain Sri Sri Radha and Krishna. By serving Lord Chaitanya, mystically you could say, service to Radha Krishna's lotus feet manifests. So this is how exalted the Sankirtan activity is. And then, what about what is happening at the topmost portion of the spiritual world? Beyond Vaikuntha, what to speak of beyond the impersonal Brahman, but beyond Vaikuntha, there is Goloka. And in the most intimate section of Goloka, the topmost section of Goloka, there's Krishna Loka. And Krishna Loka has two divisions. There is the section called Krishna Pita, which is for those who are exclusively devoted to Krishna. And there's the section called Gaura Pita, for those who are exclusively devoted to Gauranga. Just like you see, what's on the cover of the first canto, volume 1? Does anyone remember? What's in the world, the center of the lotus flower? Who remembers? And Gauranga. Yes. That's Prabhupada letting you know what goes on at the topmost level of Goloka. So Goloka Vrindavan is divided into two parts, or you could say Krishna Loka, divided into two parts. One for Gaur Leela and one for Krishna Leela. There's nothing beyond that. So which one do you go to? Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains in his works like Jaiva Dharma and Navadvip Mahatmya, what is it? That if you are exclusively worshiping Krishna, thinking of Krishna, focusing on Krishna, in your perfected state, which is very difficult to reach without Gauranga these days, but theoretically, if you just focus on Krishna perfectly, you go to Krishna Pita, the part of the topmost portion of the spiritual world where there's Krishna Leela. And if you exclusively worship Gauranga, you go to the topmost portion, you go to the half, so to speak, called Gaurapita. But what are we doing for the most part? For the most part, you can't say everyone. But for the most part, we're focusing on both. So you go to both. You have an expansion that's in simultaneously in both places. That's the glory of the spiritual world. But the fact is, to attain Radha Krishna without Gauranga is practically impossible in this day and age. Even you can live in Vrindavan and be absorbed in Radha and Krishna, but as Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's very difficult to attain Radha and Krishna, even in Vrindavan, if you're living there without Gauranga. So we have a chance to do both. You can be simultaneously in Krishna Lila and Gaura Lila in your perfected state. And that's why you read. So it's so fascinating to study Chaitanya Charitamrita and see the connectivity between Gaura Lila and Krishna Lila. How many of you love to do that? It's so much fun to figure out. This, like Mahesh Pandit. He's in Braj Lila as Mahabahu. That's his name as a cowherd boy. So it's always fascinating to see the correlations. He's this in Gaura Lila. He's that in Krishna Lila. She's this in Krishna Lila. She's that in Gaura Lila. It's wonderful. You see how Krishna is perfect and complete. He has his perfect pastimes as Gauranga. He has his perfect pastimes as Krishna. And then, who is Gauranga? Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Radha Krishna Nahi Anya. Lord Chaitanya is Radha Krishna combined. So roughly, generally we say that Namo Mahavadanaya Krishna Prem Pradayate. Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gordase Namaha. He's the most magnanimous appearance, avatar of Krishna. But actually, as you know, Lord Chaitanya he's not actually an avatar. He is Swayam Bhagavan. He is the original personality of Godhead himself. And then beyond that, in terms of our understanding, Lord Chaitanya is not simply Krishna himself, he's Radha Krishna combined. That's why on some altars you'll see Radha Krishna and then a Gauranga deity. Because Gauranga is Radha and Krishna combined. He's Krishna with the emotions and complexion of Radharani. Because he took on the emotions of Radharani, he changes from blackish to golden. So sometimes you see Lord Chaitanya act with the emotions of Radharani. Sometimes he acts in the position of Radharani. To be in the position means to act in that emotional state, that bhava of Radharani, Radha bhava. And sometimes he acts as an assistant of Srimati Radharani. That's a very advanced subject matter. But you can see that in the chapter of Madhya Lila called The Performance of the Vrindavan Pastimes. So pay attention to these details in Chaitanya Charitamrita because they're not ordinary details. Details meaning who was he in this Krishna Lila, who was he in Gaura Lila. It's fascinating. You see the interplay, the connectivity. Now in this purport, there's lots of historical information. This is the final point I'll make today, I think. About Mahesh Pandit. You get all this information about villages. What's the point of that? Do you ever wonder? And Prabhupada is quoting from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary on Chaitanya Charitamrita called Anubhashya. So we heard all that information. The Ganges flowing here, and then this village disappeared into the Ganges, this village, that village. It informs you that Lord Chaitanya and his associates are there in history. Krishna's Leela is hard to find from the mundane point of view in history. That's 5,000 years ago. According to current historical mundane analysis, the current human beings are the most intelligent that the human species has ever been. And prior to that, everyone was barbaric and uncivilized. So you can find Lord Chaitanya in the historical record. In the mundane historical record, you can't find Krishna. But you can find Lord Chaitanya because that's a bit more than 500 years ago. In the British histories of Puri, there are accounts of Lord Chaitanya. What do they say? Generally, they say, this Chaitanya started out so wonderfully as a glorious social reformer, leveling the caste system, dealing with everyone on an equal level. But then in his last years at Puri, he lost the plot. That's how the mundane historians see that. He started off so great doing social welfare work. But then in his last years in Puri, he just became a madman. So of course, they don't know what to make of that. But my point is, you can find mention of Lord Chaitanya in the historical record. In India's history, the mundaners accept Lord Chaitanya as he was a great Bengali saint. So to help you understand that Lord Chaitanya's associates, Lord Chaitanya and his associates are historical, Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta are giving you all this historical information. Now, if you go to India and look for these villages, you may not find them because what happens? Development, the Ganga changes its course, floods the village disappears. But still, you, by getting this information, can understand that Lord Chaitanya and his associates are there in history. It's easier to understand that historically than to look for traces of Krishna Lila. Krishna Lila you find in Srimad Bhagavatam. But Lord Chaitanya's associates you can find in Chaitanya Bhagavat and Chaitanya Charitamrita, and you can still find traces of their villages where they lived. So that's why that information's there. How many of you who are not from India remember the first time you went to Mayapur Dham, Vrindavan Dham? The first time. How many of you remember that? You thought, I never knew things were so big. Everyone always says that. It's more astonishing than when Londoners go to New York recently. They always tell me the same thing. We thought London was super intense. New York is like London on steroids. So similarly, when you go to Mayapur Dham, Vrindavan Dham for the first time, it's like, because you're thinking, Bhakti, Krishna consciousness is just the little Soho temple. That's all it is. Everything is cramped up into the confine. Okay, the manor is bigger, but that's the extent of Bhakti. Then you go to the Dham and you see, everywhere is, people are chanting, dancing, temples everywhere. So in that way, by reading these purports, the historical information helps you to understand better. That's why it's there. That these associates like Mahesh Pandit are for real. They have a historical background. Even though they were avadutas beyond conforming to Vedic protocols and norms of behavior. And Nityananda is the chief of the avadutas. And as we pointed out in the beginning, most of the associates of Nityananda are cowherd boys. There are exceptions. All right, any questions? Yes.
Maharaj, you mentioned about how for all the devotees, they have to approach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through Nityananda Prabhu. all the devotees who have faith in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu must have faith in Nityananda Prabhu.
I said that, yes. You changed it.
And in like it's mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita that all the devotees need to approach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through Nityananda Prabhu.
They have a reciprocal relationship. You can't approach Chaitanya Mahaprabhu without Nityananda, and you can't approach Nityananda without Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. You need both. So one illuminates the other. Nityananda's associates are known for their compassion and mercy. So yes, Lord Nityananda is known to be more merciful than Lord Chaitanya. At the same time, once Nityananda alerts you to Chaitanya, you must develop your attachment for both of them. Because Lord Chaitanya helps you to understand Nityananda better. So it's back and forth. Just like when Lord Chaitanya told Nityananda, don't come anymore to Puri every year. I've got a confidential task for you to do. I want you to be in charge of spreading bhakti in Bengal. Don't come every year. You can do something I can't do. So he sent Nityananda off to preach in Bengal, to be in charge of the preaching in Bengal, and told him, don't come see me in Puri. Of course, what did Nityananda do anyway? He came because he's Nityananda. He does his own thing completely for the glory of Lord Chaitanya. But you'll find, especially if you read Chaitanya Bhagavat, so many verses and purports by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur which say that to see clearly Nityananda, you need Lord Chaitanya's mercy. To see Lord Chaitanya clearly, you need Lord Nityananda's mercy. You wonder which comes first. Just like in the prayer by Narottam Das Thakur, Gauranga Bolite Habe Pulakashari. When will I get the name Gauranga? So much so that tears will pour from my eyes and my body will tremble. Arkabe Nitai Chande Karuna Hoibe Samsara Vasana Mora Kabe Tuchahabe. When will Lord Nityananda free me from my material desires, making them so insignificant? What is Kabe Tuchahabe? Insignificant. What does that mean? What happens to you if a fly lands on your shoulder? Do you totally fall apart? Oh, my whole life is devastated. No, it's just, So Narottam Das is begging, when will I consider my material desires to be that insignificant? That's Lord Nityananda's mercy. So Narottam Das Thakur is giving a progression. Gauranga Bolite Habe. When will I feel ecstasy chanting the name Gauranga? Then Nityananda takes over and cleanses my material desires. Then there are the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, which introduce me to Radha Krishna understanding. Only then will I truly understand Braj Leela. So it's a progression. Anything else? Vaishnavis, yes, you have a question? Oh, anyone else? No, they're shy today.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, you mentioned that you had the opportunity to read the letters which the disciples of Srila Prabhupada wrote to Prabhupada, so you got to see both sides.
Yes.
Will that ever be published for the Massa
No.
devotees? And why
No.
not?
There's even controversy about presenting Prabhupada's letters to the public because he personally said, don't do it. But I guess in the devotees' ecstasy, Prabhupada's letters, now they're available for everyone to misunderstand. But Prabhupada himself said, don't. His letters are for a particular person, particular circumstances. Don't spread them around. But in Prabhupada's absence, we're so hungry for anything connected to him. So it's hard to blame devotees for doing that, because they want their desire for anything related to Prabhupada is insatiable. I know. I was in my office at the BBT working on Prabhupada's books as production manager and final editor, copy editor. And so one day, the BBT director comes into my office with a big box. And he says, okay, Devamrita, in this box are all Prabhupada's letters and the letters to him. I want you to keep them safely in your office, but don't read them. So then he gave me this huge box of letters, put in my office, and as soon as he walked out the door, Jayadvaita, then Brahmachari, comes flying into my office. Okay, Devamrita, let's get into it. What could I do? He's the senior Vaishnava. So every day we'd take a break from our BBT work, which was round the clock. We'd take an hour break and just read letters. So Jayadvaita, then Brahmachari, would tell me, okay, I've got to get back to my editing on Prabhupada's books, but if you find anything interesting, just call me. And yes, we found lots of interesting things. Just like about the Juhu temple. This letter has not emerged. I don't know what happened to it, but I saw it with my own eyes. You know the whole drama about the history about the Juhu temple. Who doesn't know that? You'll find out. You can read it in the Lilamrita. So, to make a long story short, the man selling that property was a cheater. But Prabhupada wrote in one letter that ordinarily I would have known with my business intelligence that this man is a cheater, but Krishna covered me over. So I would go ahead with the deal. But ordinarily I would have known. Don't deal with him. He's a cheater. But Krishna blocked my intelligence, so I would proceed to go through the whole drama with buying and staying on the Juhu property. So I saw that with my own eyes. So other interesting things. One devotee, he was at that time a prominent leader in ISKCON, but he had some difficulty, as happens. You have to be frank, it happens. So he wanted to reestablish himself. And so he wrote Prabhupada, I want to get back into my Krishna consciousness. I need to do something very extraordinary to show you I'm sincere. I need to go on a dangerous mission. Like go to Vietnam during the Vietnam War or something like that. Something dangerous and something challenging to capture your mercy again. And Prabhupada wrote back, among other things he wrote, about your getting special mercy and going on a dangerous mission. Please attend the morning and evening programs. So I got to see both sides. Anything else?
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class, Maharaj. In relation to thinking about the associates of Lord Chaitanya and how they connect to Radha Krishna pastimes, I also think when Prabhupada is physically present with us, we also understand Jayapatak Maharaj was an eternal associate of Lord Chaitanya. And when we study Prabhupada's life, we find that devotees are put there in the perfect time, the perfect circumstances to fulfill Prabhupada's mission and desires. So what's the relation between understanding the time in which he came and his disciples that also came, and the relation by...
Sometimes Prabhupada would say all his disciples are sent by his Guru Maharaj to assist him. As for getting into the backgrounds of previously who was what and what were we doing, But sometimes he would say, "You're all representatives of my Guru Maharaj, sent by him to assist me." But through parampara, you can also assist Srila Prabhupada in his mission. Just like I saw one letter where Prabhupada wrote that there are two things, the Vani and the Vapu. Everyone knows that, right? It said, Vani, the instructions of the Guru, is much more important than the physical association. And he wrote that actually physical association is for neophytes. So when we read that, we thought, well, let me remain a neophyte. I want the physical association. That's the natural desire of the devotee, to be around the spiritual master. Take as much as you get, but the instruction is more important. Anything else? So you all have a chance to act as associates of Srila Prabhupada's mission, as associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nityananda Prabhu. You have a chance to go to both Krishna Pita and Gora Pita. You can simultaneously be in Krishna Lila and Gora Lila in your perfected state. Because we're worshiping both Gauranga and Krishna. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.